there seems to be a little bit of worry in the Pistons community about trading some of their young players to try to win more games in the immediate future. I'm going to talk about in this episode why you should not have concerns about that. Again, we're going to break it all down in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. And thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side and is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play Store today. Later on, we'll review the seasons of Cade Cunningham. We'll review the seasons of Isaiah Stewart. By far, this episode is going to be the most positive review of the season we have. I think these two players, Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart, have an argument to be the only players to really have a net positive season for the Detroit Pistons. I think that's an argument to be had. At least I think that's probably how I feel at this point. So we'll talk about them a little bit later. But first, I want to discuss, I think, the topic that I'm seeing obviously it's going to be talked about a lot because it sounds like the Pistons are going to make a lot of moves this offseason and maybe possibly a risky move. And James Edwards III just dropped another article, Detroit Pistons beat writer at The Athletic, just dropped another article about what he would do if he had the GM hat on, a trade he would make. And it kind of heated up a lot of this discussion about it. And in this trade, or in this article, he had a trade where he's given away a Jaden Ivey, where he's given away a Jalen Duren, and a top pick for Mikal Bridges and Nicholas Claxton, and Dorian Finney-Smith. So it's not that trade that I want to talk about. It's not that specific trade. It's the idea of trading your young players to go get some win-now players for this part of your whatever you want to call it, team building process. I think that's what absolutely the Pistons have to do. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think it's the right move. However, I'm seeing a lot in the Pistons community, some hesitation from people saying, if you trade these young guys, you're going to max out. Why you want to max out as like a 35-win team, a 40-win team? You're just going to be stuck as a mediocre team year every year. If you just give up on these guys now, you're not getting a bona fide superstar in return. And I just want to spend like the first segment just ranting about this because I think that couldn't be further from the truth. It could not. That just isn't true at all. And I know where a lot of this is coming from Pistons fans. This all comes from the SVG era with Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, Blake Griffin. But at the end of it, so now everyone's terrified of making any moves. And first off, I just want to say, when you are scared to make moves, when you don't want to make moves, that's how you end up. That's worse than making the wrong move. Being scared to make a move is worse than making a wrong move. So that's somewhere you don't want to be at. That's first. Second, I just want to make it clear why the first thing we're going to talk about is why that situation is completely different from where the Pistons are at right now. When the Pistons made that trade for Blake Griffin, and the years before that, you can question them giving contracts to an Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson and all that. The team before that, their biggest issue was that they never stayed healthy. Like that was the biggest problem. Like, I don't know if it was so much team building at that point. Like, I thought the roster had made sense. They didn't hit on every draft. That hurt. And they really messed up their free agency a lot. But there's a lot of things that went wrong. But overall, the team building, the roster wasn't terrible. They just got hurt nonstop. Reggie got hurt nonstop. That's what really killed them. But when they made the trade for Blake, it would not be anywhere near the Pistons trading right now because the Pistons were capped out as that team with Blake because they are trading for a guy on a max contract. And when they hit that offseason, they had almost no room to really make moves. I believe that offseason, their biggest transaction was getting Glenn Robinson III that offseason. Like, that was their big, we just went and got a wing that could shoot and play. Like, that was their big thing because they were up against the cap with multiple long-term contracts on the books. They were screwed. Like, they had no room to get better after that. That is not the case here. with the Detroit Pistons. If the Pistons make moves right here in this offseason, they are not going to be finding themselves up against the second apron. They're not going to find themselves without the flexibility to make moves down the line. Like it's nowhere near the same thing. I feel like that's where the majority of this concern comes from, is comparing those two eras. They're terrified of making a move for a star because then they think that's, it's screw, you're going to be capped out. So I just want to say it's nowhere near the same situation at all. At all. Financially, flexibility-wise, it's not even close. That's first. Second, and this is why I really want to get across. The Pistons won 13 games this past year. 14 games this past year, okay? They are not going to go from 14 games to 50 games within an offseason. There is going to be steps. They're going to have to go from 14 wins, 13 wins to 30 wins, hopefully to 40 wins, to 45 wins. The Pistons need to make steps. All they've done is take step backwards over and over. They've taken step backwards over the last 4 years. So now they have to make a move to actually push a step forward. And that step forward, yes, probably is not going to be a 50-win team. It probably is going to be a 30, 35-win team. That is probably what their next step is going to be. And that's fine, because you need to make steps. So if they were to trade Ivy and Duren to go get players that will help them make this next step to get to 30, 35 wins with Cade Cunningham, a 17-win, 18-win improvement, 20-plus win improvement, if they surrounding Cade with those players to make that next step, that is the right move to make. That is the right move to make. They wasted the last 4 years letting young players do whatever, and all they've done is taken step back, and then just had one of the worst seasons in NBA history. They need to make moves for win-now players to help them make a step in their team-building phase. And then when they do that, I know the concern is if they trade Ivy and they trade Duren, like I said, it's like, oh, well, the guys you got now, you're stuck with them. That's their ceiling. Now you're just going to be capped out as a 35-win team. Again, completely untrue. That's just not a true statement. The first reason why that's not true is Cade's going to continue to get better. If you believe, you're only making these moves if you believe Cade is your franchise player. And if you believe that, you also believe he's going to continue to get better year after year after year. He's only played 2 seasons worth of games, not even. You expect him to get better as the years go on, which he will. So that will increase or elevate your ceiling. Asar Thompson, I'm assuming, will be back. He's going to continue to get better. That's going to help elevate your ceiling. And then by far the biggest point, even if you just want to go against that, by far the biggest point, I don't think people understand. It doesn't seem like a lot of people understand. There are multiple additions of every NBA team. Every NBA team has that is contending right now. That is a good team. They went through multiple additions of their team over the last 5-7 years. There's been multiple versions of each team. So if basically the reason why I'm saying this is this: if the Detroit Pistons were to go out and trade for multiple 5-year contract players and max deals that weren't that good, then yeah, you're max for the next 5 years because you just went and used all your cap space, long-term cap space, long-term flexibility. Then yeah, okay, you're screwed like that. But they're not going to do that. If they go out and trade for guys, all-star level players or near all-star level players, they're on the books for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, that are, whether they're relatively younger and can get better, or whether they are who they are. They're really good players, and you got them on the books for the next 2 or 3 years. You know what that means? That means they are expecting that those guys that they bring in will help the Pistons, and during those 2 years, make the steps, make the process that they need to see from the team. Make the step to a 35-win team. Make the step to a playoff team. Make that step, and then in 2 to 3 years, when their contracts are off the book, you then make the next version of the team. Once you see that, okay, these guys helped Cade get better. These guys helped Asar get better. These guys, help make the culture better than what it is. And now we're at a point where you're winning 40 games. You're a play-in team. You are a borderline playoff team. You've went from 13, 14 wins to that. Now their contracts are up, or in the final year of their deals. Now you say, okay, now it's time to make the new version of this team that's ready to then make the next step, which they'll have the flexibility to do so and will be able to do so in every fashion possible. That is how team building goes. You don't make moves in 2024 when your franchise player is 22 and then say, oh, that's the team for the next 8 to 10 years. You're screwed now. 8 to 10 years, that's your team. You better hope they win 60 games. If they don't, you're in purgatory forever. That's not how it goes. That's nowhere near how it goes. Unless the Pistons were stupid and trade, like I said, for 3 guys on max deals that weren't even that good, then yes, you're maxed out for 5 years or they're on long-term deals. But that's not what they're going to do. That's why you're hearing them talk about signing Tobias Harris for a 2-year deal. That's why you're hearing about trading for guys who are all-star or near all-star players that have 2 to 3 years left in their deal. Because those guys, the whole plan is going to be that during that time, they help these players and help this culture turn around, help them get to that next step of their team building. And then when their contracts are either in an expiring year or at the end, or their contract is up, you are now in a better position with a better culture, with a better team, with a better franchise player to either maybe recruit some players, to have a better idea of what players you need around them, have more confidence. They are now in a position to build the next version of the team that's aiming for like the top half of the Eastern Conference. Like that is the plan. So I don't understand the idea that people or the sentiment I'm seeing from people that, if they make moves this offseason, they're capped out. That's who they are for the next 10 years. No, why? Why is that the case? That doesn't make sense at all. Like we're about to watch a team in the Dallas Mavericks. Luka is 24 years old? How many versions of his team have we seen already? We've seen like 3 to 4 different versions of the Dallas Mavericks already. How many versions of the Devin Booker Phoenix Suns have we seen already? Like these teams unless your GM and front office are dumb and make long-term deals that handicap you from making any move. No one's suggesting to do that. But as long as you avoid doing dumb stuff like that, there's going to be multiple. By the time Cade's 26, we're probably going to see 3 to 4 different versions of this basketball team. That's how the NBA works. That's how you build teams. Especially when you're building a team with a dude on a rookie contract. Things are flexible. Things change. You make different versions for the specific step you're trying to make. That's why I wanted to rant about. I don't get that sentiment. I don't understand why people feel that way. Whatever the Pistons do right now does not mean they're capped out, that they're stuck now because they want to win 30 games. There's nothing, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to win 30 games next year. They won 14. They didn't even get to 15 games won this year. Why is 30 wins being frowned upon? 35 wins being frowned upon. If the Pistons trade for a guy that's on a 2-year contract, and over the next 2 years, the Pistons win 30 wins and then win 37 wins, that's a hell of A plus. That is big time. That means in your 3rd year, they're probably going to then make moves to take that next step to get into like 45 wins. Like you need players on this team that is going to help you get to that point. Because right now they're struggling to even get to 20. You need to go out and get a whole new roster that's going to help Cade get this team to 30 wins, to 35 wins, so you can start building upon that. You can't just skip steps. Sadly, it's not going to happen organically with the Pistons. We just saw what organically looked like. It is what it is. That's the reality of the situation. So I went really long with that first segment. I apologize with that, but it's just something it frustrates me. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. So, anyways, when we come back, we'll review the Pistons franchise player season, Cade Cunningham. We'll talk about how he did this past year when we come back. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championship is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you'll get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers at ebaymotors.com. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I'm watching this. I have the on my second monitor over here. I'm watching the Celtics Heat game at the same time. The Celtics are trolling. Why do the Celtics do this? They should be sweeping the Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler too. After how good they played this year, Boston that is. How are they down 9 right now in the fourth quarter? I don't. They're trolling. Um, and before we get into Cade's season, let me just make it clear again. 1 point clear again from the first segment. Obviously, you have to make the right moves. If you do something, if the front office does something dumb, like I mentioned, trading for multiple guys on 5-year contracts to where they're not good and now you're capped, okay, then yes, that's a concern. But smart front offices won't do that. Smart, like you have to assume that your front office is going to do the right thing. If you're just going to operate with the idea of your front office is constantly going to make the wrong moves over and over and over again, then nothing matters anyways. Nothing will matter at all. If if you're just going to assume that the front office is always going to make the wrong decisions and nothing will ever come of it, then none of this matters at all anyways. Like seriously, like nothing even matters. So I'm just going to operate under what a smart front office would do, and that's what they would do. So, and it sounds like they're really trying hard to get a smart front office in this offseason. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, Cade Cunningham's season, a season where I believe he proved that he is indeed the Detroit Pistons franchise player. He is going to get a contract extension after this season, and I would say was a pretty damn successful season for Cade Cunningham. This season, he averaged 23 points a game, basically 7.5 assists, 4.3 rebounds, 45% from the floor, 35.5% from deep, 87% from the free throw line. Compare that to the first 2 years of his career. I'm not going to do just one season because he only played 12 games in second year. So I'm going to go through the first 2 years of his career, 41% from the floor, 30% from deep, very inefficient, 17 points a game. You look at this past year, compared to that, you got massive improvement from the floor, 41% to 45%. You got massive improvement from beyond the arc, 30% to near 36% when including dribble pull-ups and how he shot on those as well. You got, his efficiency field goal percentage going from 46% to 50%. He drew more free throws this year, 4.4 compared to just 2.8 through his first 2 seasons. He shot 87% from the free throw line, which is an improvement over his first 2 seasons. Like every part of his game, he improved on. He got better in just about every part of his game. So it was a successful season for Cade Cunningham. But there were positives and there were negatives. So let's get I want to get the negatives out the way first. Because like I said, I think this is going to be the most positive season reviews we do with Cade and Isaiah Stewart later. Let's get the negatives out the way first. The first negative that I just completely lost what I was trying to say. My goodness. Sorry. Now I got it in front of me. First negative I want to talk about is obviously the win-loss record. There's going to be a lot of questions, and there's already been a lot of talk from Pistons fans, not a lot of Pistons fans, but some Pistons fans asking, if Cade really was like that, how are the Pistons losing this many games? And Cade shoulders some of that, 100%. I think most people agree that 90% of it is on the roster construction. The coaching staff, the front office. Like, I think everyone agrees. I think everyone agrees that the majority of the blame goes to that. But that doesn't mean Cade doesn't wear some of it. Cade could have been better this year. There's areas of his game that Cade could have been better at. At the beginning of the year, he was really struggling with turnovers, and the turnovers definitely contributed to some of the losses the Pistons had at the beginning of the year. Now, if you talk to some people, a lot of people would say that the turnovers were a direct result of the spacing he was playing with. And once the spacing improved, the turnovers went down, which makes sense. But nonetheless, he was turning the ball over too much. And that was contributing to a lot of the Pistons' issues in the half court. So he had to get better at turnovers, which he did throughout the year. But that was a part of the reason why the Pistons were struggling at the beginning of the year. He was turning the ball over a little bit too much. I think one of the main criticisms that Pistons fans probably will have that they want to see Cade work on is how he closes games. At the beginning of the year, it was clear that it looked like he was really just out of legs closing games out. At the end of the game, he just didn't have the legs, the stamina to really, go all the way, trying to work himself back into basketball condition. Then I would say midway through the season, I'd say around that December, January area, I thought he was pretty good closing games out. They weren't winning, but a lot of it, I don't think was because Cade wasn't showing up in the clutch. I thought there was many games like in that midway point of the season where Cade was playing really well in the fourth quarter and the things just weren't going his way. Then you had another brief stretch, I think, between January and February where he was struggling to close games out. And, he had a few tough quarters in the fourth quarter scoring wise. And then after the All-Star break, I thought you saw even better, him play even better in the fourth quarter and have some good bright spots. So I think his fourth quarter play was up and down throughout the year. I think his conditioning played a part of it. I thought he also just missed shots. I thought some of the decision-making contributed to it. So those are areas he has to improve on from this past season. Be a better closer, be in better shape, which is something he mentioned in his exit interviews that he knows he has to get better at. I'm talking about his being in the best shape possible. That's what he's going to be working on, his conditioning, which I think will play a big part in it. And then I also think, like I said, the turnovers has to continue to make sure he maintains those. He also can obviously get better shooting-wise. I think the biggest thing he has to improve on is finishing around the basket and drawing fouls around the basket. He wasn't that great of a finisher this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with not getting fouls and also trying to draw fouls. Even though towards the end of the year, he was blowing a lot of bunnies around the rim. So he could have had even better numbers. So not a perfect season at all from Cade Cunningham. Those are some things he can work on. But overall, I think it was a pretty damn good season from him that has a lot of people in the Pistons organization believing he is the franchise player. A lot of players that his teammates believing he is the franchise player. And I think most Pistons fans feel that he is the franchise player. He had a really good season this year. For a guy coming off that leg injury and was basically his second season, to see those kind of improvements across the board, his efficiency rise like it did coming off of that injury. He went from having a 49.2 true shooting percentage to nearly 55% true shooting percentage. That's a big jump in just one offseason. Again, an offseason that featured him coming off of major leg surgery. This was a big, big step forward for Cade. And I know he's already working on it right now. I know for a fact he is still working right now, training, trying to get better. He's not going to be taking a break till around the finals, until after the finals. He's in the lab right now trying to get better. So I thought this was a really good season from Cade. I think the main thing that the Pistons wanted to figure out from this season, the main thing was, or the biggest question I should say was, is Cade the guy? Is Cade him? And he answered that question. He's going to get that extension this offseason. He's going to get it, and they're going to build a team around him. And I think the better the team is around him, the better he'll look. Once they get adequate spacing around him, once they get, wing defenders that can also bring something offensively, once they build a team that makes sense, he'll look better. The team record 100% will get better. And he'll be an all-star pretty soon, I think. Next year, I would bet that he's an all-star next year. And in a few years, hopefully he'll be competing for all NBAs. So I think Cade's really damn good. And I think he showed that this past season. His 3-level scoring, the ability to get to the basket, the ability to shoot from mid-range over guys, his ability to remember before the year, one of the biggest things I asked for was to see that pull-up game show up from beyond the arc, to see him shoot better from beyond the arc. Because that was one of the biggest things about him coming out of college. And I thought he proved that this year. 30% through the first 2 years, worked on it, comes back nearly 36%. That's a massive improvement. And like I said, a lot of it was on self-created looks. So I think everything is trending in the upward direction for Cade Cunningham. I thought he had a really good season. There's things he has to work on 100%. He's not perfect. He's not a finished product at all, but he's extremely young. It was basically his second season in the NBA. Everything's trending forward. Let's just put it this way. If last year he didn't get hurt and Cade put up these numbers, everyone would be losing their minds. Now I'm not talking about Pistons fans. I think people who paid attention to this draft class last year, if he does this, everyone's losing their minds. But since this is his third year out of the class, even though he missed last year, it's technically his second year, it's not being talked about as much. And obviously the Pistons team was so bad that it's kind of being overlooked. But if this was what people saw from his second year, everyone would have said this is a massive success. So I can't wait to see what the third year brings for Cade. Can't wait to see what the Pistons put around him. I think this was a really good year for him. So let me know what you guys thought about Cade's season. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. When we come back, Isaiah Stewart. I thought the only other net positive player from this season for the Detroit Pistons We'll talk about his season when we come back. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, whether it be big or whether it be small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out. Explain, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life, especially those small things that they continue to just build up and build up and build up. Eventually, those small things become big things. And it's better, like I said, to talk to somebody rather than let's keep that inside and let this build up and really affect you. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. The Pistons have drove me crazy all year this year, and I've used this podcast as really my therapy session. I come on here and I rant and I say everything I feel and get everything off my chest. But a lot of people have more things going on in their life and more important things going on in their life, and rather than how Troy Weaver's destroying the Detroit Pistons, or how Monty Williams is having a terrible coaching year for the Detroit Pistons. Like, a lot of people have more important things going on, obviously. And therapy can be different for everyone. Again, like I said, most people have bigger problems than just the Detroit Pistons. And if you're thinking of starting therapy to talk about some of those issues you're going through or things you're dealing with, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Again, all the online therapists, they're obviously they're all online, but if you're not vibing with one of the online therapists you get, you can switch just like that with BetterHelp. Again, it's extremely flexible. It's designed to fit your schedule entirely online. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh briquettes, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. I've been using DoorDash for years. I absolutely love DoorDash, especially for times like this. Last year for Mother's Day, I used DoorDash and I sent my mom something while I was at work. She was at her house. I sent her some flowers. She absolutely loved it. You want to go back to last Valentine's Day? My wife was at work. I decided to go ahead and send her some flowers and send her some chocolates using DoorDash, and she absolutely loved it. I was able to type a little note on there. They delivered a note with her or to her as well on the flowers. It was great. I absolutely love DoorDash. It's amazing. I would suggest for all of you guys to get involved with DoorDash. It's absolutely amazing. You can get all your Mother's Day's gifts all in one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order with code Locked On NBA. That's Locked On NBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply again with DoorDash. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first list of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Isaiah Stewart, Beef Stew. A player that I think everyone knows I was not that high on before this season. Not the highest person on Isaiah Stewart. And I know that a lot of fans, obviously, he's like the fan favorite. Everyone loves Beef Stew. Everyone loves the fact that he's super physical. Everyone loves the fact that no one wants to fight him, obviously. Everyone loves the fact that he reminds them of like the bad boys or whatever. Like, everyone loves that by him. But I've been, obviously, I don't really care about that stuff. I care about what are you doing on the floor. And that was my biggest complaint with Stu over the last few years. That everyone loved him for his personality and what he was doing, but I didn't think the on-court production matched the love that he was getting. This past season, I thought was easily his best year in the NBA. I thought he was starting to piece it together. And like I said, next to Cade Cunningham, I think he's probably only the other net positive to come from this season. Last year, he shot 44% from the field. This year, he shot 48, damn near 49%. Last year, he shot 32% from deep. This year, he jumped to 38%. He shot 54% on twos last year, jumped back up to 57% from twos. He shot 73% from the free throw line last year, shot 75% from free throw this year. He maintained being a really good defender for the Detroit Pistons. Their defense was obviously better with him on the floor. And I thought the biggest thing, obviously, for Isaiah Stewart was obviously his three-point shooting. They've been trying to make him a 4 for the last few years. I still don't believe he's a 4. I think he's proven that he is best utilized as the backup 5. And when they're able to run lineups with him at the 5 with a guy like Asar next to him, or if you run Stu with just Stu, Cade, or another guard, whatever, and just spacing like pure shooters, you can go 5 out, really cause trouble for teams, especially when the Pistons had Gallinari and Muscala. Those lineups dominated. It was because Stu was able to hit threes this past year. It wasn't just an up and down season. It wasn't just, the first 10 games he shot well, then the rest of the year he shot like trash. No, he was pretty consistent throughout this year, shooting from deep. He's got better finishing around the basket. And I thought it was because he was getting better matchups around the basket. They're allowing him to go at mismatches, smaller guys. He was getting better quality looks, I should say, I feel like, around the rim. And defensively, like I said, he continues to be the Pistons, next to Asar Thompson, their most impactful defender. Continues to be able to switch really well. An underrated rim protector. Not the greatest rim protector. His biggest asset defensively is his ability to switch on the guys and defend multiple positions on the basketball floor. And even offensively, along with the 3-point shooting, I thought he was getting better with, trying to make the right reads. I still don't think he's that great attacking stuff off the dribble. I don't think he's that great at that. He maybe is a little bit better, but not to a point where you really want it happening a lot. But I think he got better in making quicker reads and trying to keep the offense flowing. So yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory with Stu. Like, I think it's just as simple as that. Honestly, I think if you just summed it up to one question about Stu before the year, it was, is he going to hit threes? Like, that's really going to be it, because they're going to try to make him the 4. Is he going to hit threes? And while, again, like I said at the beginning of the year, before the offseason, even if he shot 38% from deep, teams weren't going to respect him this year. It's going to take a minute for teams for that gravity to actually happen, for people to actually care. And I don't think he might not shoot enough. Actually, he does not shoot enough threes at the 4 position to really pull that gravity. Now, as the backup 5, it's different, which is why it was so good with him when he was playing on the floor as the 5-man, which I hope is what the Pistons do next year, because he's so much better at that position. The Pistons are so much better with him at that position. But nonetheless, when he's at the backup 5, he's pulling centers out, and he's able to attack those guys off the catch, and he's pulling those kind of rim protectors away from the rim. Now it's changing the court completely. So I think that was big time for him. He played really well this year. The biggest negative I have with this season, which I think is a legit one, is the fact that he's gotten injured back-to-back years that stopped him from playing more than 50 games. He played 50 games last year. He played 46 this year. I think that's pretty concerning. That's back-to-back years where he's not even making over 50 games played. So let's keep an eye on that. Is he going to be all right? Is he getting injury prone? It's like, or is how much of that is just them not playing him because the season's over and they're trash? Like, how many games could he have actually played at the end of last year? How many games could he actually have played at the end of this year? Who knows? All I know is his back-to-back years where he's dealt with injuries throughout the year and then also ended the year with an injury. So don't know, but it's concerning to say the least. But that's really the only negative I have from this season. I think everything else, before the year, I had questions about how much of a quality player in the NBA he actually was. He absolutely answered that question this year. He proved that he is, at the very least, a quality NBA rotation player, at the very least. And his contract, I think he played at the level of his contract. I think he's worth that contract. So great season for Stu. I think those two guys, Cade and Stu, had the best season for the Pistons. And you could argue the only net positive seasons for the Detroit Pistons. So let me know what you guys think about Isaiah Stewart's season. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kookie Hill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. If you're available on your podcast platforms, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out.